Hey friend, welcome to Grounded, the vestibular podcast. I'm Dr. Madison Oak, aka the Vertigo Doctor. I am the vestibular physical therapist who is here to help you with all things dizziness, imbalance, and vertigo. In this podcast, we explore the fascinating world of vestibular disorders. Come with me as we dive headfirst into a journey to discover the mysteries of the brain, the inner ear, and the balance mechanisms that keep us grounded. Whether you've been managing dizziness for one day or 25 years, we're going to get real about what it takes to manage dizziness, handle the anxiety cycle, and thrive, not just survive, with your vestibular disorder. First, I want to remind you that this is never medical advice. Remember, this podcast is for informational purposes only and may not be the best fit for you and your personal situation. It shall not be construed as medical advice. The information and education provided here is not intended or implied to supplement or replace professional medical treatment, advice, and/or diagnosis. Always check with your own physician, medical professionals, and healthcare team before trying or implementing any information found here. Hello and welcome back to Grounded. Today we have the lovely Danni Mills, a vestibular group fit member, with us, and I am really excited to have her. She is coming to us very early in the morning. What is it, 7? I
6:30.
6:30. Oh my goodness.
That's
Thank
not
you
too
for
bad.
being here. I appreciate you. And I'd love if you introduced yourself and told us about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Danny. I'm from Australia. So I joined Vestibular Group Fit probably less than a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I guess like a lot of others, I was on a really long, lengthy journey and just trying to
Mm-hmm.
find answers and all that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I came across you as a long-term follower and then decided to take the plunge and join Vestibular Group Fit.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I'm here today. And I'm really excited to share a lot about my story and, kind of how I got to where I am, which is in a really good place at the moment. So,
I'm so glad you're in a good place at the moment.
yeah,
And I'm so
me too.
happy you're here to share it with us because I know a lot
Yeah,
of people are looking for inspiration and what
definitely.
other people did. And I want to
Mm,
obviously remind everyone that something someone did is not right for another person and vice
exactly.
versa. This is my
Exactly.
third podcast of the day. And with everyone who's been in group, which has been really fun,
Mm,
and comparing, obviously, there's no comparison, but it is
mm.
so interesting to show like one person did a lot of Chinese medicine stuff, one person took
Yes.
medicine and exercise, you're going to tell me something
Yes.
else. And I
Yes.
absolutely love that about the
Mm,
vestibular healing journey.
mm. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, yeah, it's really exciting to share like what works for
Mhm.
some people, but yeah, it doesn't work for everybody. But
Yeah.
and our stories are so similar yet so different in
Hmm.
ways. So yeah.
Absolutely. So tell me kind of about how
Mm,
your story, how you ended up here. I know you're like, I was a follower and then ended up in group, but tell me kind of the things you tried, what worked for you, what didn't work for you, all the things.
well, that's the interesting thing I think about my story
Hmm.
is well, I was 21 when I first got about a vertigo and it
Okay.
was really, really horrible.
Hmm.
Like the worst I've ever had. I've never had it that bad since.
Hmm.
Um, and then kind of through my 20s, I was very episodic,
Hmm.
meaning in between attacks, completely normal, could live a normal life. And then every now and then I'd be like, whoop, got vertigo,
Yeah.
wiped out for a day.
Mm.
Um, and it wasn't until 2021 that things just turned from episodic to chronic.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
Lots of new symptoms came up for me, and it was really, really scary. It was like, the brain zaps, the
Yeah.
like, I couldn't even move my eyes to the side,
Oh.
like, couldn't sleep properly. Internal tremors, I think some people have mentioned they've had them. And yeah, it was frightening. And um, the thing with me was going to people like physios, etc., and they were like, "Oh, the Epley maneuver is not working." Eh. And you've heard this. This is very
This is my
familiar to
nightmare.
you, and yeah, yeah, and a lot of people here, and then they were kind of like, "Oh, it must be a neck issue." And so when I heard that from multiple people, I got obsessed. I was obsessed, and I was like, "It's my neck. It's my neck. It's my neck," and that's all I could
Hmm.
think about. And I think for me, for years, that was what I was stuck on. And I think that was really hard to get out of that whole, it has to just simply be my neck.
Totally.
And
Tell me about how you
yeah.
got out of that
Mm.
hole.
Oh, it was a long journey. I think joining group and learning about all the other and those videos you post, which is so helpful. Like, do you have these symptoms? Like brain zaps, marshmallow floor, this. Like, it's not like it could be a central issue. And I think once I just kind of accepted that it could be in my brain, I think that's where things kind of change. But
Mm-hmm.
so much money spent on people playing with my neck. And like I was just obsessed, I was just like, this has to be the person that's going to fix it, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I think it was more just self-educating myself to be like,
Absolutely. So
there has to be another answer.
before
Mm,
you joined group, did you not have a
mm,
diagnosis of a vestibular migraine?
mm.
Okay.
Uh,
So,
n-
or a little
Not
bit.
so much. Like the first person that I saw here in Australia, she
Mm-hmm.
has been working in the vestibular world for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like she is a mature woman. She dedicates her whole life to it. And she said to me, I guarantee you that first vertigo attack you had was a vestibular migraine. And I was like, I don't know what that is, so I don't want that. No, thank you. So that was when it was first mentioned to me, and honestly hadn't even heard of it.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. And then
Mm.
someone else told you it was your neck, and you're like, I know the neck. Like, that's right here. I
Yeah,
could fix that.
exactly right. It's like that seems easy. Like that doesn't seem chronic. So yeah.
100%. 100%. So then I feel like the boring, not so sexy, not very exciting thing is
Mm,
I'm going to
mm,
teach you what vestibular migraine is, and you need to
hmm
listen and you need to say, okay, now that I understand what this is, I can do something about it. But that's not exciting or
mm,
fun or like
mm,
a fun
mm,
Saturday afternoon, right? Like that's not what you
ex
want to do, but it is important.
Yeah. And I think, there were a lot of practitioners. I would be like, yeah, vestibular migraine. And they're like, why do you keep obsessing about this vestibular migraine? Like you're a clear cut cervicogenic. But it's like, like you say, and a lot of people say, I think in literature, the neck can't cause room spinning vertigo, right? Like,
Correct. Yeah, no,
yeah,
it does not. If your
mm,
neck is causing room spinning vertigo, there's some serious like something going on,
yeah,
like a red
yeah,
flag that someone missed.
mm,
You need to be like probably inpatient in the hospital.
yeah, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So yeah, you can't get room spinning. So if you have room spinning vertigo and the only
Mm,
diagnosis that you have is cervicogenic dizziness, you
mm,
need to look
mm,
further because it
mm,
just doesn't cause that.
mm. And that's, yeah, I think where I probably hindered my journey a lot because that was
That's
just
okay.
what I was hearing. Yeah. And I think once I got past that, that's when things started to change.
Totally.
Mm,
So you got past that, you educated yourself. You're like,
yeah.
okay, the person who told me is right. You watched probably a lot of
Yeah.
videos. It's like watching
Mm,
17 movies of information,
yes.
not that many, but it's a
Yes.
lot of information in
Yeah.
group. What
Mm.
did you change? Like what got you to the place that you're at now?
I think for me, medicine was something that I was like, that is the last resort. Like, I'm not going to do it unless, obviously I know a lot of people are really sensitive and they're scared, and I completely understand that. But I think when I just kind of went, you know what, like I'm gonna not only approach this holistically, but I think I need to have medical intervention.
Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
think that's when things started to, like, from the plateau
Hmm.
to things are starting to change now. Um,
Hmm.
but again, consistency for me, I think, was the biggest thing. And, I feel like a lot of people in group and just in general with this diagnosis is there's a lot of like sensitivity with hormones, like
Hmm.
weather changes and stuff like that, food triggers, etc. Um, I'm really lucky where I don't feel like that affects me as much.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, for me, it was definitely just the consistency of like moving, eating well, like
Hmm.
eating often. And I
Hmm.
was a hairdresser for 12 years. So
Ah,
there, there was times where, on a day to day, I wouldn't eat till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And like, that was just no good, no good. So,
no good at all.
yeah, so
I
just like lifestyle changes and stuff like
totally.
that.
I think
Mm.
that's great because it goes to show that integrating the two together, the holistic lifestyle changes,
Yes,
medication,
yes.
all of the things together are going to end up giving you the best plan of care. And I think a
Mm.
lot of people are completely resistant to either one
Yes.
or the other. I have patients who are like,
Mm.
I'm not going to change anything about the way I sleep or eat or
Yeah.
anything. Like, give me
Mm.
17
Mm.
meds. And I have people who are like, I want to absolutely never touch any medication, but I
Hmm.
will change everything about my life. And I don't
Mm.
necessarily think that there's a wrong way of going about it, but I
Yeah.
do think that integrating the two is so helpful more than
Yeah.
anything.
Oh, definitely.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, when I finally got to that point of like, I'm just going to try it. And, like you say, you, you can try it. If it doesn't work, that's okay.
Ditch
Like
it.
yeah, exactly. There's other things you can do. I was really lucky when I started medication. I'm on the lowest dose possible and it works for me. Um,
Awesome.
yeah. And,
Love it.
side effects minimal. So, yeah, I was really lucky in that respect.
That is really lucky for sure.
Mm.
What things have you been able to get back to since joining group
Oh.
and lifestyle changes and the things? Tell me about what your life looks like now, because I think that that can always be helpful and expansive for people.
Yeah, definitely. I think, so like I said before, I was a hairdresser for 12 years.
Hmm.
I have given up hairdressing, and it wasn't just because of this, but I did work full time when I was at my worst. And, there's a part of me that's like, that might have been a good thing, but then a part of me that was, maybe I should have given my body a break. Um, but for other reasons, other opportunities came up. So, I left hairdressing and I was okay with that. So at the moment, like I work for a neurosurgeon, and yeah, she's an amazing woman. And I feel like her care to her patients is what every specialist should be. And I feel like I wish she was really into vestibular stuff, so she could be my
Yeah.
specialist, but probably not her favorite thing to do. Um, but yeah, so I work for her, and then I've got another kind of sit down job. And going from, hairdressing to a sit down desk job, a huge adjustment, right? Like,
I can only imagine.
yeah. But I think it allows me to, have those snacks when I need, just really calm my body down when I need. I'm not focused on four different things going on and I need to be there, I need to be here. Like I can just be.
Totally. I love that. A human being, not so much a human doing.
Yes, exactly. And it's funny because you said, what things have you gotten back to? And it's kind of like the smallest things, like I cleaned my car the other day, like I washed my car and it was fine. Nothing bad happened. Um, like things like that, and I think having a vestibular disorder, it really took my zest of life away. And especially at first because I was frightened. I didn't know what necessarily was going on. And I was like, am I going to be like this forever? And I know you probably hear that all the time. Um, but I feel like I'm getting that joy back and that zest for life back.
I love that. That makes me so
Mm,
happy. That's
mm,
wonderful. And I think that a lot of healing, right? I don't see healing
mm.
as a destination. I'm not just,
Yeah, of
okay,
course.
I'm healed now, right? But I think that
Mm,
so much of that builds on itself in a way where, like, I'm feeling better because I'm eating well. And because I'm eating well, I can now exercise. And because now I can exercise, I can go to the gym with my friends. And since I can go to the
mm,
gym with my friends, and I feel social. And these things start to build. But at first, you
mm.
do have to do it dizzy or do have to do it scared.
Yes,
And I'm curious if
yes.
there were things that you did, were terrified of that you did anyway. And you're like, oh, that ended up being okay.
Yeah, definitely. I think, and like you say, do it, you've got to do it dizzy, and that's okay. But I'll use an example because, you know, I think it was last year when I was still at the hairdressing salon. And the girls had planned for this Christmas party and they were like, we're going to go pole dancing. And I just straight up, I was like, nope, can't do it, won't do it, too dizzy for that. Look, I didn't swing around, but I did the warm up and warm down stretches.
Love it.
Um, but, looking back now, it's kind of like if somebody said, oh, we've got an activity planned or something, like me now, I wouldn't say no straight away. That was kind of something that I worked really hard on was not saying no straight away. I would always be like, no, can't do that, because this will happen. And then,
Yes.
yeah. And
The,
once you start kind of getting past that, give it a go, do a little bit, things start to change in your
mhm.
mind as well.
Absolutely. I love that. You're like,
Mm,
there are some things that maybe I can't do right now, but there's also
yes.
probably a lot of things that I can do. And
Mm,
a lot of this is like it's almost like a victim mentality, not that,
yes.
and that is a really touchy subject for people,
Yes.
but
Absolutely.
shifting your mindset to this is happening to me,
Mm,
to life happens for me is a
mm,
really hard thing to do.
mm,
But it can be as simple as you go to a restaurant and the wrong thing is served to you. This happened to me
mm.
the other day. And I was like, you know what? The universe happens for me. I didn't get the food that I wanted, but I bet I just prevented myself from getting food poisoning.
Yeah.
And those little shifts make
Yes.
the biggest difference in your gratitude in your life in all the things.
Yeah. And it takes time and it's so much easier said than done. I know you say
Oh
that
my
a
God,
lot.
yeah.
Um, but it, with patience and time, consistency, it, things start to shift.
It really does. How long do you feel like it took
Mm.
for those shifts for you to be kind of where you are now?
I would say a while. And, because when you live with something like this, there is an element of grief, and people handle grief differently, and it does take time. I feel like for me, this year's been a bit of a game changer. Like something shifted. I had a moment in January this year that I was in remission, so to speak, for a while. And that's kind of when I went, you know what? Like, and the symptoms did come back, not as bad, but that's when I was like, I really knuckled down and I was like, reading, educating, just like not overwhelming myself, but just really was like, I took a dive into healing this year. And I think I left a lot of that grief behind, so to speak. You know, I think sometimes it's easy to compare your lives to others. That was a big thing that I had to let go of. Um, but yeah, I think this year's been the year.
The year of Danny. I love it.
Yeah.
So I'm curious,
Mm,
with that grief, do you feel like
mm,
there's like the steps or the cycle of grief, right? Do you feel
mm,
like you really went through those? Do you feel like you're like,
mm.
okay, I was grieving and now I'm at acceptance? What did that look like for you?
I think for me, like the anger part was probably the longest
Yeah.
part. And like I said, like, and I did do therapy for a while, and I said to the therapist, I said, I look at people, if I go to the shops or something and I go, bet you're not dizzy. But and that's the thing working in healthcare now. Like I work,
Mm-hmm.
and I see people come in with chronic pain, um, issues, and you wouldn't even know. I would walk past them in the street and you just would not know. So
Not a clue.
I think, yeah, and I think that was always unhelpful, obviously, to be like, you know, you're at the shops, I bet that this is easy for you. um, but yeah, I think once I kind of learnt that everyone's got their story, everyone's got their thing, I think that's when things started to change as well, and the acceptance started to kick in for
I love
me.
I love the
Mm.
admission of that, right? Like it's
Mm.
hard to admit something like that where you're like, I used to go to the shops and be like, bet you're fine. But that's not true. Most people are actually not fine most of the time.
Yeah, and I really have learned that, like seeing people come in, to our office, and I'm like, yeah, you look like a completely able-bodied person, and it's like, oh no, I've got this big growth in my brain. It's like, oh, okay, yeah,
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
And
yeah.
totally, it's really interesting when you start to
Mm,
think of it that way and put yourself in a new mindset entirely.
mm,
It's not about even if everyone else in this world was perfect and fine and had no dizziness and no pain and no
mm, mm.
tumors and nothing, even then that mindset still would not be helpful,
Yes,
right? It
yeah,
still
yeah.
wouldn't benefit
Mm,
you. And
no,
being in that like, well, it's happening to me mindset
mm,
is not useful for anyone. It's just
no,
hurting you. It's like when the kid bullies the other kid on the playground
mm,
because they think that
mm,
it makes them feel better, but in reality, it just makes everyone feel worse.
yeah. And I think, it's totally like okay to have that moment where it's like, because these things can come on really quickly and very severely. So I think, it's okay to, like, you guys say a lot, like, embrace the suck, you know.
Yes.
Yes. Um, but yeah, it's kind of just not hanging on to those thoughts of why me, and sometimes it's not why me, it just is, it's, and that's what my therapist said. She's like, there's no point asking why. Um, she just said it just is. And I was like, okay.
Totally. Totally. And that's a hard thing to accept also. And
Mm,
I find the people who do the best do all the things, not just one thing and yada, yada,
yes.
yada, but also have this mindset of, I don't care why it happened, but I know what I'm going to do about it.
Mm,
And you
exactly.
are in this place now where you're like, okay, I have
Mm,
these tools. It took me a while to build them. I couldn't even figure out what was going
yes.
on for a while,
Yes.
but I do have tools now and I can get it done. And that's great. That's awesome.
Mm,
You're like, okay, I have the ability to do something about it when it comes. So when you
mhm,
do have a flare, right? Because even if you do
mm,
everything totally perfectly,
yes.
you can still get an attack, which is infuriating. But when it does happen,
Mm.
what are your tools? What do you do?
Ah, I think it depends on the severity. I think for me, being outside and moving, like gentle moving, is something that's really, really helpful for me. I do really like, that kind of the vagus nerve stuff. I don't have a gamma core. They're hard to get in Australia. I think they are a thing here, but then they're not easy to access. Travaga, I don't think we can get here.
Yeah, they're
Um,
hard to get.
yeah, so I've got the Pulsetto, which is it's okay. Like I like it, but I love somatic tracking, and I did read the Alan Gordon The Way Out. Um, I do really like doing that kind of stuff, and I guess like if I do get to a point again where it's not great, I can tweak my supplements again. I think I found what works for me, and I'm not on heats, which is great.
That is
Um,
great. They get expensive.
yeah, definitely. Um, but yeah, maybe tweak that. And there's still so many things that I have in the back of my head that I want to try and I want to do, but I'm going to slowly add.
I love that because again, it's not about a destination. It's
Mm,
about a journey of this. And um someone like an hour ago was saying how it's not a destination, but it's also is something that's made her a more healthful person overall.
yes, yes. And I was going to say, because I reckon I just came back from like a really chesty cough I had last week.
Yeah. Ugh,
But
sorry.
before that, I wasn't sick for like 2 years. I dodged everything,
Wow.
and I was like, maybe it's all the supplements I take, or maybe it's, you know, making healthier choices and it's not so much because I have to, but, you do become more health conscious, I think, treating something like this. And
Totally, because your
mm,
body, it like the body doesn't make mistakes. And Dr. Emily Kostelnik and I
Mm,
talk about this often,
mm,
where from I try to take in as many perspectives in the health world as humanly
mm,
possible,
mm.
and then make my decision, but also provide them for other
Yes.
people. Like I just
Yeah.
interviewed someone on Chinese medicine for vestibular
Mm.
disorders. Fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to take all of it into consideration and say, what's going to work for my body from a healthful practice way, not overwhelm me, but give
Mm,
me the ability to say, hey, I can do X, Y, and Z, and it makes me a healthier person. Because in this world,
mm.
especially in the United States, you guys have better rules and regulations than we do about these kinds of things, but especially in the States where it's so much easier to get crappy food than it is to get
Yes.
good food and
Yeah. Yeah.
all of the things. Like I think the number one food on food stamps, which is government subsidized food, basically, not food. I don't know how to describe it. Food stamps,
Mm.
is Coca-Cola, which
Yeah,
is
right.
crazy, where it's
Mm,
like, this is not a healthful food. It's
mm.
not, and the argument is that it gives people choice, and I totally get that. But we also need to give people the choice of this is how you cook, and this is how you can make
Yes,
healthier choices, and educating people is so important.
definitely, definitely. Um, yeah, cooking is a huge passion of mine as well. So that's always been helpful. And I did definitely dabble in the heal your headache diet and stuff
Totally.
like that.
Great.
Um, but yeah, I'd never really picked up, I don't know how you'd even explain that, but I didn't really pick up food triggers as such. It was more
Yeah,
just if I didn't eat, you feel a bit.
totally. Not everyone has food triggers, and
Mm,
some people will have food triggers. I say if you have more than five distinct food triggers,
yeah.
that usually there's something wrong with your gut health and you need to
Yeah.
look into that.
Mm, hmm.
Or you have not eaten all day and you're like, ooh, I'm going to try a banana today. And then you eat a banana
And
by
then,
itself with nothing
yeah,
else.
yeah,
That doesn't work for your blood sugar super great.
yeah.
And then you have a crash and then you get an attack and you're like, oh, I'm sensitive to bananas. When in reality, you needed to balance your blood sugar and maybe
Mm,
fix your gut health. So HYH can be helpful for some people
mm,
who are like, I
mm,
definitely have food triggers and I cannot figure
mm.
them out. But it's not a long-term diet. Alicia Wolf
Yes,
herself will tell you that.
yes,
Um, and it's important to remember that, hey, this is not about eating nothing except for chicken and rice for the rest of my
yeah,
life. This is about eating as many things as I can, as much
yes,
non-processed food as I can, and
yes,
balancing my blood sugar for sure.
yes. Definitely, definitely. No, we are quite lucky here. But even like,
We still
um,
have junk food though,
yeah, definitely,
and
definitely,
it's still good.
definitely. Yeah, yeah. Every now and then, have a little naughty treat.
Absolutely. I have a really, really good family friend who lives in Marygig outside of Melbourne.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And she always sends me pictures because I can't eat gluten, but apparently you have
Yes.
gluten-free Tim Tams now.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I that is something where I'm like, next time you come to the States, Leslie, you have to bring me
Yeah,
those.
yes. Send them all.
Send them off. Seriously. But you do have good junk food. We don't have violet crumbles here, or they're hard to find.
Oh,
Those are
yeah,
some of my
yeah,
favorites.
yeah.
Australian
They're
candy
good.
is good, you guys. If you haven't tried it, it's good.
Yeah.
I'm a big Australia fan.
Yes, it is good. What about Vegemite though?
I love Vegemite.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
also
So we
love
got
Marmite.
gluten-free Vegemite now.
Oh,
Yeah. So originally it's not, yeah, it's got
yeah,
gluten in
no.
it, but yeah, no, we
Huh.
can we have gluten-free.
When I was a kid, okay, this family friend of mine, she was our nanny for a little while. And we had to do a fourth grade project on a country. And the country I chose was Australia because she was from Australia and I love her. And she made me bring Vegemite and Marmite to my whole class. And everyone was like, what is this? But
It's
I thought it was
definitely,
great to say salty.
yeah, it's an acquired taste, but yeah, I love it.
I think it's so good. I don't even know why it was invented, but it's so good.
Yeah.
It's like, why?
Yeah,
But it's
exactly.
great.
Who thought of this? Yeah.
Anyway, Marmite. It's a Australian treat, I guess. But it is good. It's like savory.
Yeah,
Yeast.
it's yeasty.
Yeah, I don't know. It's good if you guys
Just
haven't tried
works.
it.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
works.
Yeah. We'll put it in the link.
Yeah, I
We'll
will put it
do
actually
it
in the show
again.
notes. I'm gonna write
Yeah.
myself a note. I will put that in the link. That's hilarious. Yes. Okay, tell me what else you do on a
Hmm.
day-to-day basis so you don't just talk about Vegemite. Um, to kind of help yourself, or if you're like, I try not to think about it, tell me that too.
Hmm. I think it, you know, for me, I do dedicate a lot of my time off when I'm not at work
Hmm.
to focus
Yeah.
on being well. Um, you know,
Hmm.
like my days off kind of look like, I might go to Pilates in the morning, might do a
Love
big
it.
walk.
Hmm.
I've gotten into podcasts recently
Love it.
because, I always struggled with podcasts if I didn't kind of connect with the voice.
Yeah.
I was like, can't do this. But no, I found some great ones. So I'll,
Good.
go down to the beach. At the moment in
Uh-huh.
Australia, it's nice and warm at the moment. Um, do a big walk. I took up swimming last year. So that's something. But besides that,
That's fun.
like, yeah, because I do love cooking, I'm always in the kitchen doing something like that. I'm very arty. Um, so
What do you
yeah,
like to make?
I like doodling and drawing and stuff like that, and just
Slow
being
brain
creative.
tasks.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah.
coloring in, like those adult coloring in books, love them.
In the winter, I get so into those.
Mm,
It's winter is coming here, and
yeah,
I am
yeah,
excited to break out my colored pencils.
yeah. Even like I would love to get a puzzle. I think I want to invest in a puzzle.
That's a great
Like
idea.
do that. Yeah.
Great for your vestibular system too.
Oh, there you go. So,
A lot of
but
looking
yeah,
down.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But yeah,
Awesome.
mm,
I love this journey for you. And you're like, yeah, I've
mm,
done a million things. I've tried some things. Some stuff worked, some stuff didn't
mm,
work.
hmm.
And I'm kind of at this place where you know what's working for you. And you're also
Yeah,
open to changing it as needed.
yeah. Oh, definitely, definitely. And I think like um when people do join Vestibular Group Fit, there is so much information.
It's a lot.
And yeah, yeah, it can be, and I think it never put pressure on yourself to go through it all. And it's kind of like there were bits of it that I would just pick and choose from. What I felt that, I find MDDS really interesting. I never thought I had it, but I was like almost could relate to it. But I just wanted to know about it. So I watched that whole module and I was like,
Huh.
that's just good just because it was really
It's just,
interesting.
it is interesting. MDDS is
Yeah,
fascinating.
it's very fascinating. Um, but yeah, I think never put pressure on yourself to do it all. It's just kind of like you don't want to overwhelm yourself, especially if you're new, like, and this is a whole new thing for you. Um, I think just pick and choose. And that's the great thing about group is I can take little bits here and there, and that's kind of where I was like, oh, I'm going to try that whole eating less more often, or I'm still really interested in creatine. Um, I have a whole tub of it in the cupboard. I haven't quite gotten to it yet, but
That's okay. There's a
you
podcast
know,
coming out about it.
oh yeah, yeah, and I found that really interesting, and that was something that was super accessible that I can just go down to the chemist
Yeah,
and
it's
get.
easy.
Yeah, and I was that, that's something that I have on standby for when I want to start
Love it.
adding stuff.
I love that. I think, um, oh gosh, I lost my train of thought. Something about creatine, but about just all the things. Oh, in group, this is what I was going to tell you.
Mm,
In group, it used to be, this is like when a long time ago when it first started
mm,
and I didn't have a web designer. It was literally just a page of videos
mm.
with the intention of exactly that, picking and choosing exactly what you need, but then you had to scroll through the whole thing and it was a nightmare. So now when you sign up for group, if you don't know, you take an onboarding quiz and
Yes,
you can
yes,
select as
yes.
many diagnoses as you want, or you can be
Yeah.
like, I think I have vestibular migraine, but also I don't know. And it will take you through information in order and you can
Mm,
do it that way. I
mm.
always recommend no matter what to start with the start here because it tells you to
Yes.
please slow down
Yes,
because you
yes, I
cannot
like
do it
that.
at once.
Yes. Yes.
And do kind of this thing I call the wheel of management, whatever. But then after that, obviously the basics are next, but if you're like,
Mm.
okay, I will do that, but I have to learn about what vestibular migraine is, you can go to that
Yes.
course. You can go pick and choose. And the reason that I don't have it drip content, because what I could do is set it to drip every day, where every day you get want this video about this, and then tomorrow you get that video.
Mm.
I didn't want people to have to wait for information to come out if they wanted to skip here and jump there if
Mm.
that was best for them. Because at
Mm.
the end of the
Mm.
day, it's not me telling you exactly what to do. It is more
Yes.
of a self-paced thing, which
Yeah.
I think is great about it. And so I love that you're like, I jumped here, I jumped there. I think you used it perfectly, and I'm proud of you.
Mm. Thank you. Yeah, I think like obviously when I started not necessarily having a diagnosis and um but I think following you for a while and when you'd post those videos of like, do you think you have vestibular migraine but not sure? And I'm like, ah. So
Maybe it's
that
me.
was, yeah, so that was definitely just the education of it
Hmm.
was great.
Awesome. I'd love to know how your neck is now, because neck is so related, right? It's like, it's not like you can be like, oh, it's not my neck at all. Your neck is
Yeah.
related to migraine, and migraine causes neck pain and all the things. And I'm curious
Yeah.
how your neck is.
My neck's okay. Like it gets a
Huh,
little stiff, but she's all right.
look at her. Look at her
Yeah.
go.
I did go to my physio the other day, um, and we're working on my back at the moment because sitting down all the time. Um, but he's like, show me your range of motion, and I'm like an owl. I can like move it real well. And he's like, that's impressive.
That is
Stop
impressive.
showing off. I was like, yeah, because I worked, I did a lot of work on my neck, and um, when I stopped relying on people to just touch it for me, because I actually did work with Dr. Drew um, for a couple of months. So having that program was really great. Um,
I love Drew.
yeah,
Great.
he's the best. Um, and it holds you accountable and all that. But yeah, it definitely, like, things definitely helped, but yeah, it wasn't the be all or end all, which is okay.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
but yeah, learning, I guess, about the
The double
relationship with,
chin. Yeah.
yes, I walk around with a double chin.
Oh,
Um, but yeah, I find the relationship between neck and migraine very interesting. Um, but yeah, I think I was just so obsessed with that being the cause that.
that's very fair. And I think it is scary to get a diagnosis where you're like, this is chronic and I don't want to feel like this all
Mm,
the time. But if
mm,
you feel like you have a neck problem and it's going and going and going, then you do have that all the time.
mm.
But once you get
Yes.
to, oh, it is vestibular migraine, or it is Meniere's disease, or what it is,
Mm,
triple PD, whatever thing it is, then we always celebrate
mm,
because that is diagnosis day and you know what it is that you are dealing with. And when you know what it is you are dealing with, you could be like, oh, I can deal with this now. And that is so important. And another thing that you said that I love is the difference between passive and active modalities. Because having someone play with your neck or
mm.
getting an adjustment at the chiropractor or going to get a massage, it's not inherently wrong,
No.
but it is passive, and passive modalities just are not as effective as active modalities, right? Actively changing the way I eat, actively
Yeah.
changing the way I sleep, actively, I don't know, strengthening my neck, whatever. Those are active things that you are participating in.
Mm,
And not only are they ultimately more helpful, but they're also give you a sense of self-efficacy and self-accomplishment that
mm.
also helps drive more healing.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Mm.
Anything else you want to share with us?
I mean, I just feel very grateful, and I just when I read things in the group, like I feel for everybody. When I read stuff about what people are going through, and you know, I never want someone to feel like they can't get to that place of
Yeah,
feeling better. And
me
I
too.
think, I went through that for a while as well. I was just like, will that be me? And
Hmm.
I kind of always said to myself, like, I would never come on and do a podcast or anything like that if I actually genuinely wasn't okay, at a place where I
Totally.
could say to people, I'm in a really good place. And this was my ultimate goal. I think I told you to come and talk to you.
Yeah, you
Um,
did it. I love it.
yeah. And yeah, I just want people to, hold out that hope and, you know, don't put I know it's so much easier said than done, but don't put heaps of pressure on yourself. And I
Uh-huh.
think that's another thing that when things start to change is, when you desperately want something to go away,
Yes.
you are reinforcing that it is scary and that it probably will want to hang around.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I think, maybe in terms of the medication, I think maybe helped my brain just settle down. And I did so
Totally.
much work before going on medication, like um just really calming the body down, doing all the like I have this list. It is like this long of things I have tried. Like, you know,
I believe you.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Um, but yeah, sticking to and the thing is it's like some things like they are really basic, right? Like the sleep hygiene, eating well, um, moving, and you don't have to be a marathon runner, just a gentle movement, um, talking to yourself kindly, stuff like that. It's all that
Yeah.
bunched together.
All the things that we're taught not to do. Be proud of yourself, have hope. You don't need to be super intense about exercise, but you should do it
Yeah,
gently, right? All the
yeah,
things that we're like, you either have to do all or nothing.
mm,
Usually the answer is somewhere in the middle,
yeah,
almost
yeah,
always. Whether it's politics or health, I don't care what it is, the answer is usually somewhere in the middle.
yeah,
And I love what you said about having hope for yourself because that
mm,
ability to say, I know that this does get better and I just haven't
mm,
found out what it is for me yet, or I'm better than I was before, and I found that this has worked, but I know that I will find the other pieces of that puzzle
mm,
is
mm,
really important and it's really doable. And I see it happen all the time. You are evidence of that. This
yeah,
podcast, there's a lot of like episodes of people saying, "Hey, this is how this got better for me" on here, and it is. I'm looking at I have a giant calendar above me, and I can see all the podcasts this year of people doing it
yeah.
starting back in January, and like there are so many ways to go about this. It is not a one size fits all solution, but it does get better. And you are evidence of that. And thank you for sharing with us.
No, that's okay. It's absolutely my pleasure. And again, like I want people to like, and that's a big thing for me, like listening to this podcast. I was like, I'm gonna be that person. And that was like, I didn't put heaps of pressure on myself, but it was like, I'm gonna be that person that's gonna be talking to Madison about how I'm better.
I
And I
love
got
it.
there and
Here you
it's great.
are.
Yeah.
Congrats
And
to
you,
you. And thanks for being
woo,
here. Woohoo. Go,
thank
Danny. I love it.
woo.
Awesome.
Mm,
Thank you so, so much for sharing your story. It really does
no,
like, oh, it makes me emotional. It makes me so happy when everyone
and
comes on here, anyone comes on here and shares with me. It really,
yeah.
it's,
And
oh,
you probably meet people who are in a place that they're just like, how can I get better from this? Like
totally.
you would have see, and even sometimes like I thought, um, there were a few things in the group that I read, and I remember this one really stuck out to me. Um, Someone had written, um, I walked down my driveway, and I didn't feel great afterwards, but I did it. And I was like, wow, like, something that's people take for granted, you know, being able to walk down your driveway. But, um, and I was kind of in a place at that point, I'm swimming laps for 45 minutes and I'm like, oh, bless these people, like and that just made me think how far I'd come by that point. And I'm thinking of this person and I'm like, they're going to get there like they are,
They are going
and
to get there.
I love that something so simple is celebrated, you know.
Yes. It
And that
is
was
really
something I
important.
always struggled with was celebrating the small wins because I was like, well,
Yes.
I should be able to do this, as a human.
Yeah,
But once
totally.
you actually go and you start celebrating those small things,
Yeah.
it makes you feel better and
Someone once told me, and it really has stuck with me, the reason
mm,
I force people to share their wins on Saturday, not force, and
Yes, yes, yes.
obviously optional or whatever. But
Yeah.
the reason I post it every week is because someone once told me that if you don't celebrate the small wins, the big ones will never come.
Yeah.
And for you, walking to your mailbox and back might be the biggest win of this century, even though it
Mm,
seems small. And that's
mm,
okay. That's wonderful that you did it. You did it scared. You did it dizzy. Like, do it scared and do it dizzy is the mantra of this group.
mm.
You need
Yeah.
to do it in a way where you're not comfortable the first time and be okay with that in order to get to a place where you are more comfortable. And I do see people all the time on my one-on-one schedule or in vestibular group fit who are like,
Mm,
I don't think this is going to get better for me. I don't think that that's true. It does get better. You do have to be consistent. It is not an overnight thing. It takes 6 months, a year, sometimes 2 years. But I have seen people who cannot leave the house go to water
yeah.
aerobics for 45 minutes and
Yeah.
a year and a half later. It works. It happens for people, but you just need to give yourself time and consistency. And I think a lot of times people are
Exactly.
like, well, this happened overnight, so this can go away overnight. And it's just not true. But
No,
you got to give yourself that time. And it does get better. I promise you it gets better. It does.
exactly. I
And I'm here
promise
to
you
help.
all do. Yeah,
Yeah, it
definitely.
really, really does.
Definitely.
Half of it's a mindset, the other half
Yeah,
is consistency.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for
Oh,
having me. This has been
yeah,
great.
this has been so much fun. I love talking to you. All right, I'll talk to you
I
soon.
could talk about this for
I know,
hours
me
and
too.
hours, but
Me too. I could too. Oh my gosh, thank you.